on this week's Rockstar Superhero. In the music business, there are the normies, there are the crazies, and there are the in-betweens. There also happens to be an unspoken netherworld that aligns with something a little stranger and sits outside the boundaries of pretty much everything you know. My guest today, Tobi Meehan, dislikes the comparisons to the influences of his youth, but it's hard not to hear the tones that built the man. His absurdist venom-spouting new act, Squid Pisser, is nothing I've ever heard before, and that means something extra to me. The man is already a guitar god of the underworld, and also just happens to be an incredibly warm human, which seriously belies his altered state of a stage personality. The new EP, Vaporize a Neighbor, and its big brother, Vaporize a Tadpole, is out on Bandcamp now, and requires listening of a most scrutinous level. It's also recommended that you are looking for something a little confounding, a lot distorted, and that which oozes a bit from a 2-week-old wound. It's disgusting, yet somehow, some way, once you pick the scab off, it's perfect. Welcome to the new world order of Squid Pisser. This is Rockstar Superhero.
Squid Pisser is something else, and what it is, I'm not entirely sure. But here's the thing, man. I've been doing this a long time. I've been a professional drummer for 25 years. I've been in the business, and what you're doing is vital. But it's insane. It's mad. It's wild. It's new. You've taken an old concept and sort of retooled it into something that's fresh and modern. And I dig it because it's grindy and it's heavy and it's mean and it's insane. And I just want to say, man, whatever Squid Pisser's got, man, I know it ain't right, but I love it. So welcome, brother.
Oh, thanks. It sounds like you get it. And that's awesome to hear. And thank you. That means a lot. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, you're welcome. You're welcome. I'm so stoked you're here. First thing I want fans to know is you're currently out on the GWAR tour, and they may not know your relationship to the band. Do you mind sharing that real quick before we talk about Squid Pisser?
Yeah, with GWAR. So I've been a GWAR fan since like I was a preteen, and huge GWAR fan. Like they made a huge impact on me. Like they kind of encompassed everything to me: art, music, like depravity, social commentary. You know, they're legends, and they've been doing it forever. They're the hardest working band I've ever, and I know that now more than I even did ever in my whole life. Like, right. And they're just fucking the best. And then they're sweethearts too. They're down to earth. They're like, just, I don't know. It's a dream come true getting to hang out with these guys all the time. And, but I did, so yeah, I kind of peripherally became friends with them 10 and 15 years ago or something like that. When my buddy Mike Chillian and I were working on some cartoon stuff together, we decided to reach out to Dave Brocky and see if he would do a voice. You know, his voice is just incredible, and like his everything. So we wanted to team up with him on something, and we became friends with him through doing a few cartoon projects, including one called The Animated Tales of GWAR. And that's kind of how we got to get into the fold to some degree, peripherally kind of to them, because they're over in Richmond and we're over in LA, and we'd see them every now and again. Kind of toward the end of Dave's life, he would, every time he came to LA, we would hang out with him. And so that was kind of short lived. Like by the time we became friends with him, it wasn't long after where he had passed. And so,
awful. Yeah.
Just like a huge loss, you know, in the art world and beyond. And so, I was a fan the entire time, have been since, you know, being really young. And then blah, blah, blah. Eventually cut to a few years later, I had started this band called Cancer Christ, and like with the explicit goal of like, okay, I've always wanted to tour with GWAR. Like, let me start a band that like could go do that. Like, you know, that would be a viable kind of, I could see it happening. And so like Anthony Melhoff, St. Anthony of Cancer Christ, and I kind of set out with one of the goals being, let's open for GWAR, you know, and then
Right
like,
on.
a couple years later, it just kind of like ended up happening. Went on tour with them, became friends. Brent, their Pustulus, their guitar player, was leaving after being in the band for 12 years, and crazy timing. And I got to get close with him. He's amazing, and an amazing guitar player, and big shoes to fill. But he urged me to kind of like go for it and talk to the guys and see about playing guitar. And it's all been kind of working out. And so that's kind of like where I am right now. I'm on tour with them. We're in London, Ontario right now. I just woke up on the bus.
You're one of my favorite new people because I recognize your work ethic, and you're driven by this sort of unseen force inside of you. And I don't think you get bored easily, but I know you're a very active musician. You know, you're in a number of different things. You've got, like you mentioned, Cancer Christ. You're doing the GWAR thing. You got Squid Pisser. I imagine there's probably other things you're working on. But how do you make that work? Because I've never been able to be in more than one band at a time. Like for me, there's an emotional connection that's so significant that I can't unwind myself from it. I don't know if that makes sense, but
Yeah.
You know, how do you do it, man?
Yeah, I understand that. I feel like I'm kind of making up for lost time because I've had all these things in me, and I've been meaning to fulfill these like creative projects that I've kind of been meaning to get around to doing for over a decade. I was in this band called the Manx for 10 years. And I was also, while I was doing this band, the Manx, that was a very like part-time band. We did a lot of stuff, but like everyone had careers in animation, and that's what I was doing. I was working in animation.
Wow.
And so I was very much doing a lot of creative output in the animation realm. And when I wasn't doing that, I was pouring into this band, the Manx. But then, but I wanted to always that entire time, like do these other projects that I had, again, like I had been thinking about for a long time. So once I decided to kind of like shift gears, it was during the pandemic. I was like, okay, I'm going to shave this off and I'm going to forget about animation for right now. I'm just going to put all my chips on the table with like this Squid Pisser band. And then, you know, a couple other things kind of came into my orbit, like Anthony of Cancer Christ. He and I were very good friends, and I'm like, this guy has so much energy. Like he needs to be in a band. And he was like, no, I can't. I've never done music. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like,
What?
dude, yeah, he has never done any music. He's just like has it in his being and his every fiber of his, you know, like,
wow.
So I kind of had to convince him to start doing music, and then he took to it immediately and just was like, oh, this is my thing now. And like so he's incredible. He's this creative force. And so I forget where I'm at, but like, so I'm concurrently doing multiple things. Well, like I started Squid Pisser, I had poured so much into like demoing, and then I found this drummer, Seth Carolina, who's amazing. And like,
he's great.
Really, he's fucking incredible. And it's really hard to find drummers that can play that type of stuff. That's also why I hadn't taken the plunge into this type of music, which is because I couldn't find a drummer. And then also John Clardy of Terra Melos, I got on board for drumming for Squid Pisser. So like things started to kind of form, but then I had this really great situation with Cancer Christ too. So I'm like, okay, well, I can't say no to either of these. They're both like really good right now. And and then the Cancer Christ thing kind of led to GWAR, and I'm like, this is my favorite band for almost 30 years. I can't say no to that too. So, but you know, Cancer Christ is playing shows without me right now in LA. They have a fill-in guitar player. It's actually Michael from Squid Pisser who's playing guitar right now. So we're all just kind of like playing in each other's bands and keeping things going. And even though I can't be there,
I think they understand.
Yeah, exactly. Those guys get it. But it's important that the projects, I think, keep going. And like now that there are people attached to them, even more than just myself or Anthony or myself and Seth, it's like, okay, these things are like viable entities that need to continue going. So even if I can't make it, even, you know, it is kind of difficult because I want there to just be three of me to just do it all. But I have to try and schedule, I guess, at this point. But yeah, I totally understand what you mean when it's like you're invested in one and it's tough to kind of like compartmentalize.
For real.
Yeah.
For real. But the thing is I mean, look, maybe you can't do it with Cancer Christ, but with Squid Pisser, you can kind of, I don't want to say trick the audience, but right, you're going out as a character, right? So
Yeah.
so that guitar player can then, in a sense, be you, if that makes sense. Or maybe not. Maybe he's not substituting in that way. I mean, what's the trick? Or is there, I mean, do you mind giving away the secret?
I mean, I'm still trying to figure it out. So that's all to be determined at this point. Like with Cancer Christ, there are all these different snakes, and we have Spit Snake, who's the new one who's filling in for me, but he's his own entity already. And like,
that's rad.
Yeah. And I think it's exciting to the fans to kind of have new blood and fresh characters and stuff. Even with GWAR right now, it's like, you know, I didn't know how people were going to take a new character, but people are very embracing of like, you know, new fresh things that are happening on stage or in the lore and stuff. And I think it's the same with the other bands too. So we'll see what happens with Squid Pisser, because that's very much like my baby. But you know, it's becoming everyone who's in the band now. It's becoming everyone. So it's we'll see what happens again.
I sense your energy, right? I mean, I can feel it coming through the screen to me as we're talking. And I love it. I'm inspired by people like you, because it reminds me of people I wish I knew when I was in the business myself. And so I think you're very fortunate to not only be in those bands, but those bands are very fortunate to have you, because you bring a skill set and a passion that's probably pretty unrivaled for them. But I'm curious, you know, being an active, highly creative person, what are you trying to achieve in all of this? Is it just, in a sense, your own personal fan service, right? Or is there an end game for you? Like every musician I know, I'm sorry for this long-winded question.
No, yeah.
But I mean, we kind of get into it for various reasons. I was one of those dumbasses that in 1974, I was like, someday I'm going to be famous and I'm going to be rich. I was the dumb kid who went after the wrong things. I didn't go after achieving a goal of something that's passionate and creative. It was all about the end game of having stuff, which is stupid. But I didn't know. I was very mature, right? I was a 10-year-old kid in 1976, you know? But for you, is the end game the feeling of creating, of success, of looking back and saying, look what I've achieved? What is it for you?
Yeah, that's a great question. Like, I'm forced to kind of think about that all the time. But then I think it's always kind of changing day to day, and maybe there isn't an end goal. It's more of just like this line that you kind of follow of like, oh, well, today, you know, finishing this portion of this project is what's important and what's in front of me. And I don't know. So in terms of, then there's one part that's very like ambiguous and romantic and like magical, and you just kind of follow that, and that stuff's easy. It's like making stuff is just, you know, you can't stop. And like you said, like you maybe figure I can't get bored, and that's true, because there's always stuff to do and ideas that could take shape. But then there's like the other side of your brain where you're like, okay, well, I'm running out of money now because I've been putting everything into all this. And so how do I then turn that into something that like self-sustains or self-propels itself, I guess. And I am thinking about that a lot more. And I guess kind of the end goal, which I've been trying to like quantify and, you know, talk with friends about and just put things into perspective, is like, how do I keep doing all this stuff and just like have it fund itself and make it so that it's self-sustaining and I don't get burnt out financially, emotionally. Well, I don't think I would emotionally. The only thing emotionally that's tough is like when you're working with people who are negative or like toxic or like suck you by, you know,
which is half the band. No, just joking.
I mean, it's a real thing you need to navigate. Right. But and so like omitting those types of people from your projects, I think is very like essential, because it's just, that's another thing that, you know, people don't necessarily talk about. And sometimes people will get into situations where they're just super dysfunctional in bands, and they continue on, and like they have to keep it together because it's a paycheck and this and that, and they hate each other, and like I'm not interested in that at all, and that's part of the emotional toll kind of that I mean. So like the end goal probably is just like to put out as much stuff as I can because I am driven to and I want to, and have it be fun with cool people who like I respect and vice versa. And also, yeah, if I can like just not have to work a day job, you know, that's kind of the three things, I guess, you know.
Yeah. I think that's every musician's goal, is to not have to work a day job, because I mean, it is a great day job on its own, and it's obviously dominating to your life. It keeps you in great shape. It allows you to be continuously creative. You know, you always wake up with this sort of sense of wonder when you're a musician. And for people who aren't, I kind of feel bad that they don't understand what it's like, but they also don't get how difficult it is to be on, in a sense, all the time. It's brutal stuff, you know.
It is. Yeah. It's like torturous for sure.
Jumping in, when you're a creative person, the desire to be in a band is so significant. You realize, oh, sure, you could do it by yourself. You know, you as a guitar player, you can write your own material. You can really self-produce everything and you'd be fine. And then it might even be better than what you would do in a communal effort. But being in a band is a lot like having 5 girlfriends or 4 girlfriends.
God.
And it's awesome and inspiring and awful because there's this weird level of commitment. And I think the hardest part about it is bands that sort of, like you said, that almost jump into it too soon. It's like having sex on a first date where you're in this weird committed place that you're like, oh man, like I didn't know it was going to be this weird so fast, you know? Yeah. And I would just tell every musician who's listening, slow down and just make sure these are the guys you want to work with, that you're on the exact same page creatively, or you're so screwed.
100%. Totally. It's like having open communication, clear communication about like alignment of goals and stuff like that. And like some people, just a lot of people, and people who want to get into music for whatever reasons, they don't have the tools or capabilities, especially people in their early 20s, I found, or even in their fucking 30s, or even their fucking 40s.
58.
Like, yeah, it takes a lot. It's tough, and being a human's hard. And then so like integrating your life with other people creatively, financially, like emotionally, like we're talking about, like all these different things, it's incredibly difficult. And so like navigating that and finding the right group of people is like more than half the battle, I feel like. So yeah, you're totally right. Like, yeah, it's a lot. The commitment thing. Yeah. I mean, yeah.
It's a lot, like a lot. And nobody understands it. Unless you're one of us, you don't get it. And we don't think we're superior than you. We just know you don't understand. I'm not a guitar player. I'm a drummer. But I definitely understand the giant role of being a melodic player in a band. You have to have something to connect the audience. And, you know, you were saying in another interview that you try to create unique guitar effects, something that has never been heard before, that you at least haven't heard before. And I'm curious, how far are you willing to go to be unique? Because clearly you're doing it in your look and you're working on your sound. But what about influence? Like, how far are you willing to go for all of this?
In what way do you mean? Yeah, what do you mean exactly? How far? Like,
I guess what maybe how far are you willing to go is maybe the wrong way to ask it. But I guess what I'm trying to do is provoke a question well, all the way, right? This idea of jumping off the cliff. Like, to me, you're a musician who jumps off the cliff and knits his parachute on the way down. You're going to figure it out, but you're going to go for it. Whatever your vision is, you may not even have a fully formed vision, but you're going to go after it and you'll figure it out someday.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, I think when I'm creating something, it's like, it has to, like, you know, I'm kind of trying to like speak to 16-year-old me that and like blow that kid away. And right in the same way that GWAR and bands like Sleepy Time Gorilla Museum or like Mr. Bungle or Nuclear Rabbit or Buckethead, or so these are big ones for me. Like,
right.
when I first heard those, I'm like, you can do that, but you know, with Squid Pisser or Cancer Christ, I'm also trying to make songs that like are somewhat digestible, like because I could just fucking get out there with like you know, I don't know what a good example is, but I can get really avant-garde. So like
Right.
I'm not interested in going that far out there. I want like a rock and roll format where people can digest it and pump their fists and get in the pit and like sing along. That's just as appealing to me as you know, weirding people out. And if I can do a combination of the two, then that's like a sweet spot, I think. So yeah, so not too far. But so,
Right.
I don't know. It's hard. Yeah.
No, I get you though. I get you. I mean,
I get what you mean. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm sorry for interrupting. I think a lot of it. Well, I mean, I listened to the EP, right? I mean, I've heard the music. I don't know if everybody else has heard it, but I've heard it, and it is a lot. And I mean that in a good way, right? For me, it turns me on because it is something I haven't really heard. It's, yes, I've mentioned it before. It's very grindy but it is avant-garde to me. I mean, dude, I grew up on Styx in Kansas and Rush, right? Which was intensely progressive in the 70s. Like nobody knew what was coming from a band like that. It was just kaboom for their brains.
Yeah.
They could not figure that out. And then of course, as time has gone on, you find bands like Infant Annihilator that you're like, who thought of this and who plays drums like that?
Yeah.
I mean, like that stuff is incomprehensible to me. And I'm not saying it's bad. It's just so, if they've pushed the level so high, you know, a drummer like Alex Rudinger, I don't know if you know who he is, but he's been in a ton of bands, you know, Monument and Threat Signal and all these different sort of, you know, heavier, not extreme, but heavier progressive metal bands. And I was like, where does this talent level come from? How were you playing like that at 19? And I guess to lead into my next question, I look at a band like Gojira. Okay, Gojira has somehow mainstreamed themselves.
Yeah,
they shouldn't. They should not be mainstream. Something has happened to the world that in the 90s, Metallica mainstreamed traditional old school thrash metal. And then it's accelerated to a band like Gojira now taking the growlier aspects of that death sound and put it in a melodic place that is connected with a larger audience. And then I look at you and I say, maybe you're the future, Tommy. You know, maybe this extreme music, if you want to call it that, has a chance of being popularized because you're not necessarily interested in taking it again off that cliff, but you're interested in keeping a melodic center to it and a rhythmic center to it, so the audience remains connected and they look at it and say, "That's insane, but I dig it. I actually care about it." You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like the Dillinger Escape Plan is a really good example of like what the fuck, but then also, oh shit, okay, like yeah, like I feel like they kind of perfected that.
So then, in a sense, I guess I should say, then you do hope to popularize extreme music in a way. You just want to keep it within the bounds of what you believe is accessible or somewhat accessible.
I think I can't really worry too much about any of that stuff. I don't have too much of a like plan or agenda when it comes to that. Like I would like to continue doing this type of stuff forever, and that means it would be nice to have people coming out to see it, which means it should be somewhat accessible. So I mean, there's like kind of a lineage of like steps that need to take place. But also, you know, I can't let that inform my creative decisions. And because I have, and I know people who have let this kind of like master plan of attaining fans dictate their creative path. And then that it ends up in art that feels contrived and like kind of like you're saying, it's like, look what I can do. It's like for the sake of what, you know, like
influence, likes, all that bull crap.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like, if you're doing it for the wrong reasons, I think people are going to recognize that. It's like they can just sense it, at least from what I've witnessed. So,
Yeah.
so yeah, I just try and like follow the path of what like, whatever. It's just, I don't know how to describe it except for like, when you're working on something, you know when something's right. You're like, no, no, no. You're kind of sifting through, you're sculpting, you're looking at it from different angles. You're like, oh, there it is. And sometimes you have it right and you have to like put it down, go away, come back and realize, oh, it was right. Or it was right like 5 versions ago. And so it's just kind of looking at things from different angles and being aware, of when to say when.
I love that you said when to say when, right? I think it's easy to look at a project like Squid Pisser and think it's some sort of an inside joke almost, right? But I look at the song titles and there's a feel for what you're doing there. You know what I mean? There's a thematic approach to what you're doing, lyrically at least. And I think you're trying to tell us something. I'm just not exactly sure what it is. And maybe you're willing to share, but you know what? I wanted to ask you this because this is a big deal for me personally. Looking at Squid Pisser, talking to you today, I feel like I'm talking to the real Tommy, right? I'm not talking to a caricature, a character, however you want to label it. I'm talking to the real dude who just happens to be on tour right now. And I think about the bands that you've been impressed by, the GWARs of the world, and then the Cancer Crisis and right, the Squid Pisser, the things that you're doing. You've always been intrigued by pushing the envelope musically, creatively, through the senses. And I'm wondering, how do you think you were formed? Like when you're a kid, do you remember always feeling this way about music, that you love stuff that was kind of on the edge, that was a little wild, that was a little over the top, that pulled you out of maybe the drama of home? Because I'm curious, like what your early years were like and how much of it is nature versus nurture. Like here's Tommy because I was born this way, or here's Tommy because I got away from that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've thought about this a little bit because I've mentioned this to speaking with some other people recently. And like, yeah, I mean, I can pinpoint like certain pieces of art, like critical things growing up, or certain ideas when I was very, very young. Like I remember somebody came in, or it was like we would go to the library in elementary school. I was probably in 1st grade or something. And like the teacher, somebody explained to me that like somebody published this book. They wrote it themselves and they published it. And it was this concise piece of art that you could, one day I could like make and put out. And that the idea of that was like, whoa, I can like make this thing that's my own and make it available to people. For whatever reason, that was appealing to me. Right. So I feel like that was maybe one of the things that I can remember that was one of the seeds for like why I like to do stuff like this, I guess, art,
right,
in a way that I can share with people. And then another thought that pops into my head is like at a very, very young age, I had discovered Child's Play, the first Chucky movie.
Nice.
Yeah, and that just being like, this is bringing me from my
terror
living room to like what the like, and then just where my imagination goes from there, like how and the visceral nature of just like the blood and the stabbing and the screaming and that was like 6 or 5 when I had seen that. So like I do think that those types, maybe those 2 things, I don't know, like started to lead me down a path of whatever, being into that type of art that I'm into. I don't know. But,
yeah, that's good parenting right there, man.
Yeah, my mom rented it too. We got KFC and we watched Child's Play during the day, and it was like, okay, I can handle this during the daytime, but then when nighttime came, I mean, and I still have Chucky nightmares to this day. So
oh
like,
my God.
Yeah,
she's like, honey, it's a 2-parter. We're gonna watch Pet Cemetery next. Really mess with your head.
Super traumatic. Yeah.
Man. Well, you know what? But you talking about the library and that you talked about that little book, right?
Yeah.
I went to high school with Tobi Vail, who is the drummer for oh my god, Bikini Kill.
Oh, okay. Wow.
And she actually did the same thing you're talking about, Tommy. She started a fanzine called Riot Grrrl.
Yeah.
That was the name of the fanzine, right? And she made it because that's what she liked, and she wanted people to know about her politics, her music tastes, etc. And it grew into a scene. And to this day, my daughter will say, "Hey, I'm a Riot Grrrl," and I'm like, "I went to high school with the girl that started that phrase." You know what I mean? And
Yeah. Like,
and here you
wow.
are doing the same thing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
I want to talk really quick about the 4-song EP coming out. Actually, I'd like you to talk about it because I was a little confused by one of the things in the PR notes that basically said it's called Vaporize a Neighbor or it's called Vaporize a Tadpole. And maybe you can split the difference for me and explain what both are and which is which. Can you do that for me?
Yeah, absolutely. So, so our very first release was My Tadpole Legion, which is 8 songs and bunch of guest vocalists. Then we have this 4-song EP, which has a song called "Vaporize a Neighbor," and that's the title of the EP.
Gotcha.
And then what we did was, we made a CD. Mark from Skin Graft, amazing dude. I love working with him. He's so cool, so knowledgeable. Oh, I can't say enough good things. He's wonderful. But he had a cool idea. Well, it was his idea to make it a comic book too, which I love, and I'm so glad we did because we got so many cool artists on there. And it's Skin Graft's thing to do comics with 7 inches. So it's just this cool, like beautiful came to fruition moment with all that. But so what we did was we made a CD too, because we just figured we'd make a CD. And but we put Vaporize a Neighbor and My Tadpole Legion together onto a CD, and then that has like everything of those. Yeah, so it's kind of both things combined, plus a couple extra like demo tracks of songs that I think aren't even out yet. Because there's another release coming out soon, a full length called Dreams of Puke, which I don't think we've announced it yet, but I just kind of did. I think I mentioned it before, but then that's going to be a full length that's coming out on Skin Graft and Sweatband Records also. So yeah, so that's the difference. One's a CD, one's a 4-song
on Skin Graft,
7-inch Skin Graft and Sweatband Records. Yes,
and it's out now, correct? You can get it through Bandcamp, your Bandcamp page, right?
Yeah, through the Skin Graft or Squid Pisser Bandcamp page. And then, they might be made available through Sweatband soon. I'm not sure. And we'll have them at shows and stuff. And I haven't even seen them because I've been on the road. So they're sitting at my place in Los Angeles in a box, and I need to go. I'm excited to see them. I still haven't touched one yet. So I'm pumped.
Wow.
But yeah, thanks for asking about it.
Yeah, for sure. Well, look, I'll have one final thing to say to you. Your PR called your project Amped Up Rainbow Vomit.
Oh, cool.
and when you hear a description like that, how does it make you feel?
I mean, I love all those descriptors, like the music. I can't get on board with like genres too much, like grindcore. I was mentioning this to somebody else recently. Like I'm not very well versed in all of these genres and subcategories. Yeah, I feel like people who don't play music use those more than musicians,
right? Or obnoxious critics like myself.
Yeah, sure, and that's okay. And people are doing their best to approximate things, but like, and some things do fall strictly into these categories, and a lot of times that's a deliberate choice. I'm trying to like stray from all categories or bring in. I'm trying to just not think about them, and like inevitably I'll pull things in from different categories, but I don't even know. I'm not very well versed in all of them. So when people do use like descriptors like squidcore or someone had called it mucky hardcore, which I thought was cool. Just the word mucky, descriptors that have nothing to do with music currently, but could be now that people are using them for music. So like rainbow, vomit, gelatinous, viscousy, like vomitous. I don't know, just anything that's like evokes this kind of like, you know what I mean?
Slimy, sticky, oozy thing.
Yeah, all of that. And then colorful too. Black metal is black and white. You think about it and it's cold and maybe it's blue. And Maybe there's a tinge of fire, but like only a little bit. And like,
Right.
So
there's a lot of hate there too.
Yeah. So
right?
it's black and yeah, totally. But like with something that I'm trying to do, it's like I want to kind of pull from all the colors of the rainbow, and then even colors you've never seen before, you know, to just as a goal anyways.
It's really punk to
ambitious.
me. I mean, it's ambitious metal punk to me. Like I don't know where.
Yeah.
I don't know where the heck it goes. And yeah, it doesn't need to be qualified at all. However, it is helpful for a fan who has no idea. I mean, I'm gonna drop a few cuts into this interview so people will have a chance to hear it, right? But people want to know, should they even approach it, you know? And then the goal of a chat like this, right, is to get people to take a chance, you know? But I think you, man, are the reason people would take a chance. And I don't mean this in a weird way. I'm just saying there's something about you, Tommy. There's something about you. And
thanks, Rob.
I think the reason you're getting where you're getting these opportunities, your musical world is growing because deep down inside, the core thing that makes you is exactly what we're drawn to. Squid Pisser is a side of Tommy, but it's just a piece of you. And I'm just super grateful to know you, man. I think you're completely badass.
Thanks for saying so. That's so sweet. And like, I really appreciate you taking the time to even, you know, do any research on anything that I'm for anyone to check out stuff that I've been working and toiling away over in my office at home, my home studio. It's like, it's surreal and incredible. And thanks, dude, for even, you know, I appreciate that a lot. Thank you, Rob.